Good to have everybody with us today. So this is the third shot that I've had of the material. I think I'm going to learn it, but it may take until next week before I kind of have it all down. But it's Encountering God, and of course that's our Reach Conference theme. And so Scott and I were talking. One of the primary thoughts that he has on all of the encountering classes that we're talking about is how God is pursuing us. How God is pursuing us. And that may, I think in some contexts, that really, is kind of a new thought maybe in some ways. We think about how we pursue God. Well, we like to study the Bible. We're here this morning because we wanted to study, right? We'll be in worship. But the idea of encountering God, but how God is encountering us and pursuing us. And so we want to think about that a little bit. And so mine is called Encountering God Then and Now. We've got baptism, we've got the Lord's Supper, and community across the way. Those are the different subject matters. Mine is Encountering God Then and Now. And so the first thing that I want us to do is look at a couple of snippets, like 3 acts from the Jacob story. And this is not we're all familiar with the Jacob story, but I want us to focus in on a few things today. So if somebody has Genesis 25, 24 through 26, just a few verses, they might read for us. Genesis 25, 24 through 26.
So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb, and the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over, so they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them.
Thank you, David. So we've got this story of a birth. So some of this stuff is so, you can't even make it up. It's so interesting. What do we have at the birth of these 2 twin boys? We usually say Jacob and Esau, but it's really Esau and Jacob, right?
They're not identical.
They're not identical. Thank you. That's maybe the most profound thing I've heard in 3 weeks. That's good. They're definitely not identical. What else do we learn about it? There's a birth order. What's the birth order? Okay, Esau. And how would you describe Esau? Again, Charles, they're not identical. What would be his physical characteristics?
He's ruddy is what they say.
He's ruddy, red-haired guy. I picture him being kind of burly. I've got a brother. Both of my brothers are like 250. I'm 161 on a heavy day, right? So I can see, we have contrast. So, and how would you describe Jacob?
An accountant.
An accountant. Oh, wow. Oh, Bob, man. Bob went for the jugular right here. He's more like, he likes the indoors, right, Bob? He's not climbing poles. I get it. Okay, there we go. So he's probably an accountant type. He's in the tents, Wow, yeah, thank you. So think with me about, now notice, not only that, but through the birth canal, what do we have? We've got some of this going on. Notice what's the birth order?
He's catching his heel.
He's catching his heel. So Jacob is grabbing a hold, right, of Esau's heel. So he's, help me out here. So the name Jacob means heel grabber. Okay? Jacob means heel grabber. And so not only is that going to be a physical manifestation, I would suggest it's metaphorical with respect to Jacob's life. Okay, as we think about him. So what's the next scene we have? The birthright. Act number 2, Genesis 25, 27 through 34. Does anyone have that? Next story. It's pretty short.
The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was a quiet man, staying among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." That is why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, "First sell me your birthright." "Look, I'm about to die," Esau said. "What good is the birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright.
All right, thank you, Kathy. So what do we have here in this story? The boys are older now, right? And we've got a scene where Esau's out hunting, right? Returns home. How would you describe him?
He's a man of his own.
He's
A self-made man.
okay.
He's independent.
He's independent. He's a hunter. By the way, which parent prefers Esau? His dad, right? So we already have some sibling rivalry going on, right, in the house.
Probably it's just one-sided though. I think Esau was pretty much okay with everything, you know. The birthright didn't mean anything because he can do it all himself. He don't
Okay.
need daddy.
Self-made man, like you say.
Yeah.
Okay?
He must have been awfully hungry to sell it.
Yeah.
He knew what it meant,
Right.
and yet the food was worth it.
Yeah. And probably in that day and time, who would connive to even do that except Jacob? Oh, here's my chance. So again, he's grabbing at something. And notice the persistence of Jacob in the story. He doesn't just say, "Okay, here you go, have some." He makes him do what?
An oath.
He takes an oath. You're going to give it to me, and I'm standing here until probably these witnesses here, you say you're going to give me your birthright. He demands it, right? Very persistent.
Well, it's interesting to know too, what parent likes who is how we know that took place in that passage. If you were the firstborn,
Right.
you were to inherit, basically.
Exactly.
So it's pretty amazing for him to say, "Fine, you can have it."
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the story. So the story. So we have, birth. We have a birthright change. Now think for a moment. Fast forward. Then the boys are older now. They're men. They've got families of their own. And Genesis 32, 22 through 32. Genesis 32, 22 through 32. We have now Jacob. We're going to concentrate a little bit on Jacob. Does anyone have those few verses? Oh, you got it? Thank you.
During the night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 servant wives, and his 11 sons, and crossed the Jabbok River with them. After taking them to the other side, he sent over all his possessions. This left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled him until the dawn began to break. When the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of its socket. And the man said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." "What is your name?" the man asked. He replied, "Jacob." "Your name will no longer be Jacob," the man told him. "From now on, you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and with men and have won." "Please tell me your name," Jacob said. "Why do you want to know my name?" The man replied. Then he blessed Jacob there. Jacob named the place Peniel, which means face of God, for he said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared." The sun was rising as Jacob left Peniel, and he was limping because of the injury to his hip. Even today, the people of Israel don't eat the tendon near the hip socket because of what happened that night when the man strained the tendon of Jacob's hip.
Thanks, Ben. So we have this story, in theological terms, it's called a theophany. It's a manifestation of God with Jacob. And what's going on here in the scene?
Wrestling match.
We got a wrestling match. Yes, Mark, we got a wrestling match going on, back and forth.
And why do they have this wrestling match?
Good question. Got a wrestling match going on. We'll describe some of the details of the match.
Well, it went on for a long time, there's no doubt about that.
Okay, so it continued, Bob, through the night.
And so how did the accountant get the upper hand?
Oh, I don't know, yeah. If he was little and didn't have the leverage, how did he do that, right? Well, he was persistent, right?
I mean, 'cause we think, like we talked about earlier, on Esau's side, he was the big burly, probably
Yeah.
hunter guy.
Exactly.
And here's Jacob that
Yeah,
wrestles with God.
yeah.
Maybe it was a mental exercise,
Okay,
It's about
spiritual exercise.
yeah. I think for his hip, it was not mental. You know, it was definitely physical, right? As he walked away with a limp. But notice what does Jacob do? And he's wrestling with God, and he's still persistent. He's still grabbing the heel, just like he was with Esau. He did not give in until what? He says, you got to bless me. I'm not letting go. Right? So he demands to be blessed. And God blesses him, but he's going to walk away with a limp, right? So physically, and then he what else does he do to him?
renames him.
He renames him, Ben. So now he's Israel, right? He's going to be the father of the 12. A great nation is going to emanate from him. Part of the promise to Abraham God made, right? Your descendants will be like the sands on the seashore. And then his grandfather. So Jacob then becomes Israel, the father of the 12. And it's interesting when you think about, the characteristics of Jacob. He's conniving. He's demanding. He's even with God. And yet God blesses him. He honors his wish, right? And he becomes the father of the 12. So what do you see? What do you see in the stories? Do you see any kind of, anything special in the stories, the three scenes that we've talked about? Development of a character.
I wonder how much of what he does is when Rebecca had inquired of God and she was told the older will serve the younger. Did she pass that on to Jacob, and that was him trying to make it all happen?
Mm-hmm.
And just how much of that drove a lot of that, not just character, but just trying to make what was told happen.
Yeah.
Taking it in his own hands, going, okay, I'm supposed to do something with this, which
Mm-hmm.
we often think, okay, I have to do it, instead of just letting God do it, but
Yeah.
he really pushed it. But also just to see, just back to your point, God is pursuing, that he was gonna use him.
Yeah.
And it was gonna take time to get him there, but he was always pursuing and didn't turn away because whatever it was Jacob did wasn't the way God wanted it, didn't
Yeah.
matter, he was gonna keep after him.
And think about the idiosyncrasies of the characters of Jacob, of Esau, even of his parents. They sound kind of like a normal family, kind of like the family I grew up in, right? There was sibling rivalry. There were 5 siblings in my family. And there was sibling rivalry. So God uses these kind of natural happenings to further, in this case, really the progeny of the world. So he had an encounter with God. We might say that Jacob had an encounter with God. And so if we think about now, so let's kind of, we're kind of pushing and pulling with the text. Think about how we have an encounter with God now.
When we lose a fight, do we ask somebody's blessing? Probably not.
Okay?
We're probably happy if they just walk away.
Okay.
But in this case, he didn't. And I think it might be a picture of us submit to God.
Okay? Submitting to God. You know, God kind of slyly has the upper hand in this, even the final story, right? He said, okay, I'll grant you your wish, but you're going to walk away with a limp, and I'm changing your name. And by the way, I'm changing the trajectory of history through you, Jacob. Unbeknownst to you, Israel, I am changing the trajectory of history. Well, what about encounters with God that we might have today?
We still ask him to bless us.
Okay, we do.
That's the same as with Jacob. Bless us.
We do.
Help us.
That's a really good thought that we ask for blessings. And we even specific blessings, right? I mean, it may be if we're childless, maybe for children, maybe like Rebecca had done.
And I think like Jacob, we sometimes are very stubborn
Yeah.
and demanding.
Mm-hmm. And I know in my own case, selfish, right? I ask for selfish things sometimes.
Well, tying on to Laura too, is that we, maybe not face to face, but we wrestle with God too.
We do.
And we just follow that line of thought, if we don't get what we want, are we still willing to submit to God's will?
Mm-hmm.
We ask for specific blessings or whatever, and it doesn't come out that way, do we still have faith to say, not your will, but mine, not mine, but yours?
Because sometimes the answer is no, right? Whatever I'm asking for. You know, we think about encounters with God, this would be kind of, a great, obviously it was a pretty profound biblical encounter with God. Sometimes our encounters are more mundane, right? Maybe than that. I've not been asked to be the progenitor of a great nation. So here's one. Richard Foster in Celebration of Discipline writes this: the discovery of God lies in the daily, in the ordinary, not in the spectacular, in the heroic. If we cannot find God in the routines of home and shop, then we will not find Him at all. If we cannot find God in the routines of shop and home, right, we will not find God at all. So thinking about encounters with God, because that's kind of our theme, this is a great encounter, we might say. But what about our daily encounters with God?
If we don't see the blessings that God does give, just on a daily basis, they just said, maybe they're not the major things,
Yeah.
but how major are those little things that we get? I mean, it's kind of us putting a value on them,
Mm-hmm.
but if we don't see those, am I really going to see the big stuff?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm gonna miss it.
Yeah.
But how important are those little things? And I think we can dismiss things that are, in our mind, mundane, but they're pretty significant. If I'm looking every day to be led by God, that's significant in what choices I make if I'm letting Him lead my choices and decisions.
Every encounter is potentially an encounter with God. So I think I've told several of you this story before, but we'll go through my wife is very bubbly. She likes to talk to everybody, and we'll go through the HEB checkout line, right? And she always, the cash register person, well, how's your day going? I'm going, oh no, don't ask her that. I'm kind of like, I'm the accountant, Bob. I'm like, okay, let's pay for it and leave. But she's got to know, how's your day going? When you get off work, has it been busy? Just just trying to encounter, to connect, and I'm trying to rush out to the car and, with all the bag of groceries. God, it's just the way we are. But really, those provide encounters, don't they, with people. Thinking about encounters with God, I've got a book up here. I don't know if has anyone ever read A Severe Mercy? It was written by Sheldon Van Auken, and I would highly recommend it, A Severe Mercy. So Sheldon Van Auken, the author, was a friend of C.S. Lewis's in Oxford. He was actually visiting there because he was from the States. He moved back to the States, Van Auken did. And Van Auken and his wife were atheists to start with. They arrived at Oxford and didn't believe in God. And they came into an encounter with C.S. Lewis and the great apologist at Oxford. And they became Christians. And I would say that his wife became a very dedicated Christian. He, not so much. Sheldon was kind of, he was on the fence and, he'd go to church, but he was really not committed. And so his wife, at the age of about 40, was going to come in with cancer. And she dies. And so Van Auken writes C.S. Lewis to tell, Jean has died. So, and he kind of complains. And by the way, another thing, they did not have children. That is, the Van Aukens didn't, because they wanted to really concentrate on themselves. Again, when they were first married, they were not believers, and they just wanted to concentrate on them. And so C.S. Lewis writes him back, and he tells him, you have been delivered a severe mercy. He said, because Jean, his wife, was a very devout Christian. He, not so much. He really hadn't made the commitment. He said, God can use her now in your life much more powerfully than He could have used her even if she was alive. And so God has dealt you a severe mercy. He did. Sometimes we get those severe mercies, right? They can come in various ways. Maybe somebody dies. It could be, a relationship. Has anyone have an encounter that you like that you might share with us? Severe mercy. Well, we have opportunities every day. One other example is along the road to Emmaus. Think about Luke 24. It's kind of a long section. We're not going to take the time to read the full one, but let's think about what happened as that story developed. This is after the resurrection, along the road to Emmaus. Anybody remember the story?
Two people walking along and didn't recognize, Jesus came and talked to them.
Okay.
They didn't recognize them until after they sat down and started eating together.
Okay, Laura, so we've got two, it says Jesus followers, right? Come and they don't recognize Jesus. And he basically says, well, what's going on? And basically one of them says, you must have been under a rock, which he literally had been, by the way. Because if you don't understand what's about Jesus of Nazareth, came and did many miracles, and, the chief priests and whatever had him put to death. That's kind of the synopsis. Oh, okay. And so and as Laura says, there is a point in the story where they recognize who he is. Their eyes were open, it says, right? And it's when they eat. And he, like feeding the 5,000, he takes the fish, he prays, he blesses, he distributes. I don't know if that was the trigger point, but it could have been. But their eyes were opened, right? And now they know who he is. And so the beginning of the story, there is an emotion that these two people feel. And it says, the text says they were sad. They were just sad that, Jesus was here, he's gone, he's been killed. And then later in the story, it turns kind of like doubt about Jesus. And then at the end of the story, they're telling the 11, right? They reunite with the 11, and they tell the story about meeting Jesus along the way. Jesus appears, right, to the disciples. And the text says in two places that they have joy. So sadness, kind of doubt, and then there's joy in an encounter with Jesus. And that was kind of an unexpected encounter, right? Well, I guess with Jacob we could say that was kind of unexpected on his part. So we've got unexpected encounters with God. And they always, produce some kind of emotion and some kind of long-lasting effect, right? When we have an encounter with God, it leaves us kind of with a long-standing effects. So again, how do we encounter God today? So there's a long-standing tradition, really from the first century, that says church fathers say we see Jesus in the face of the poor. We have an encounter with Jesus in the face of people who are marginalized, destitute, have no one else. And we see Jesus even in the face of people who are down and out, who struggle, right? And we see people that are marginalized in our society every day. We rub shoulders with them. Maybe at work, it may be, it doesn't even mean that they're just totally destitute financially. They may be just spiritually destitute, right? And we have the opportunity to then have an encounter, really not only with them, with God, because He's the one who places those encounters in front of us. So your daily, we've got 5 minutes perhaps, in your daily walk, how is it that you can see Jesus and have encounters with Him?
How can you avoid it?
Okay?
I think the opposite, you've got to look for it.
Okay?
It's easy for me to go about my day and not look for Jesus.
Yeah. Mark, I can be the guy going through the lane and, let's just get the bags out to the car, right? I mean, there's the accountant trying to be efficient when my wife is trying to make a relationship, have some conversation, connect with somebody.
Sometimes, Todd, you just have to, when things happen, whether it's in your life or someone else's life, I've started asking God, what do you want me to do with this? What needs to be done? Do I need to be silent? Sometimes we say too much.
Right.
Do I just need to give a hug? Do I need to pray? What do you want me to do?
Yeah. I think that's maturity. I mean, Debbie, as you're talking there, I think about the prayer I've been praying lately, use me. And I feel God saying, you really just need to be quiet. Just be quiet, Lewis. You talk too much. I really feel that sense of needing to be silent in times when I want to speak.
I have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
Well, I think our tendency sometimes, if it's for or with others, is to fix it.
Yep.
So we try to find a way to fix it. And sometimes silence and just a hug is caring and being there. And because sometimes our words can do good and sometimes I don't.
Right.
I've started asking, what do you want me to do?
Right. That's
And
good.
there are times that it's just silence.
Yeah. We have, to Mark's point, we have maybe to look for those opportunities. I know last week I went with Gene Potter to Lindell, the nursing home. We had like 26 people that going to nursing homes, I've noticed, and I've been doing it ever since Dan Wilson asked me to go 35 years ago right here, right? And you never leave without them saying, man, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for coming. They're always complimentary. And that's, to me, that's an encounter with God, because that's something that they just crave. And when you think about people in nursing homes, it's almost as if they're in prison. It's the same concept, right? You can't go anywhere. You have no freedom. And I just think that those moments that we, grab or seize can really be important to people, including ourselves. What else?
When I talk to somebody that's in recovery and I first meet them, I oftentimes look at them and say, God must really love you, because here you are getting another chance. You're not in jail. You're not homeless. You're not dead. You get this daily reprieve, and you have this opportunity to make something better of yourself.
Yeah.
And then we review what the word reprieve means. It means you should have been punished today, but you're not being punished. You're being loved and given this opportunity. Again,
Another group of people who we can certainly make a difference with and for. I've got a friend named Mike Dennis, and Mike, he was on a UT football team in 1969. He was a defensive back from Henderson. He only played 1 year for Del Royal and just finished out his college career at UT. Then he went to Southwestern Medical School, graduated, moved to Llano, Texas, and opened up a general practice. He was practicing medicine. And Mike got caught up in drugs and alcohol. And, he went to one of the most prestigious, med schools in the country, became a doctor, and lost his life, like permanently. And this happened. He was homeless on the street of Austin, really just kind of down and out. And I met him, and he's a Christian now. He's in full recovery. But he had an encounter, right, that was severe, but it proved to be something that was really, in the long run, helpful for his life. In fact, if you guys seen My All-American, Freddie Hallmark, that story, that UT football, he played with Freddie, and Polly and I watched it the other night, and I texted him, and then my phone started ringing, like at 9 o'clock. He calls me up, and he said, I remember Freddie. Freddie had his leg amputated at UT. But we have those opportunities, right? And some of them are not, they're mundane. Maybe it's at the nursing home. Maybe it's at the HEB checkout. But we all have opportunities to help people encounter God. Charles.
Just follow up on a comment a while ago. I think we all do this. We ask what to do. I just wonder how many times has the answer been, I've already told you what to do. I told you before. But it wasn't what we wanted to hear.
Right.
Like you at the checkout.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm still working on that, by the way. I'm not, I wish I could tell you I perfected that.
I'm not accusing.
I wish I could tell you I perfected that one, but I haven't. I still struggle with it.
Well, it's probably not in your skill set.
It may be. Well, yeah. Bob pointed that out right at the first of class, so we don't need to go any further with that. So, well, thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you being in class.